Well, Dick, here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
All right, everybody, what's going on? Logan JYA, former Drykog, maybe still am. I don't know, I'm a little washed to be calling myself that, but I'm here with an absolute legend, my boy Miles. You've definitely seen him around these parts before, and he's usually playing Drytron, but he's moved on to a new ritual strategy, one that's been getting a lot of praise and a lot of action, that being the Voiceless Voice. So, my man, first and foremost, how are you doing? And what'd you do with this frickin' strategy?
Doing great. We took the deck to Vegas for the 3v3, and we did something a little bit unorthodox. I don't think anyone's done it yet, but we took a team of Voiceless and got all top 8. So did excellent. Very proud of our performance, and I think I'll contextualize a little bit why I'm so proud of this particular top as the interview goes on. But very proud of my teammates and what we were able to accomplish. It's a little sad we couldn't win the whole thing because right there in your clutches, but then I'm still very proud of the top 8. So,
as you should be, my friend, because this is quite the accomplishment, and I think most people would agree, and would you as well, that Voiceless is kind of the underdog right now.
Voiceless definitely feels like the underdog. I think that because it's a deck that just doesn't do nearly as much as Fire King and Snake Eye in terms of like the end board it puts up. I think a lot of people kind of slept on it as an option, but I still feel like the deck is extremely strong. It's very mid-range, very control-y, and which is different for me because I'm usually known for playing combo-oriented strategies. But I also am just a fan of ritual summoning, and so when I saw these cards, months and months and months ago, I told my teammates, I was like, "Hey, we're not playing Fire. We're gonna play this," and they all kind of they shook their heads and went, "Okay, sure," and then. It didn't always look good, actually, but I'm really happy we played the deck. So, and it's cool. It's always cool to get a cool top. Like we probably could have played Fire King, Snake Eye, and been one of the other, million people who topped with it. But it's really cool to top with a deck that not a lot of people saw, topping with. So.
I'm right there with you, man. I couldn't agree more. There's something to be had for uniqueness. Now, let's get into the specifics of the day of. So, it was you and 2 other colleagues who were playing roughly a similar build of the Voiceless Voice. Could you just quickly tell us what were, if any, the differences between your list and your colleagues?
Yeah, so went to the YCS with Corey, Nance, and Austin Taylor, who are members of my team here in Houston. And like I said, we had both come to, or all 3 of us had come to like similar conclusions about certain cards, but at the same time, I'm okay with my teammates kind of differing from my particular game plan. So the deck lists were a little bit different, but we all kind of settled on some things being important regardless. And so we all pretty much played Ash somewhere in our list. We all played Droll somewhere in our list, which was funny because I think that was a card a lot of people were kind of going back on, saying that Droll wasn't nearly as good as other hand traps, and I can explain why I actually vehemently disagree. We all decided Nib was mandatory, and me and Corey were playing Super Poly, but Austin didn't play Super Poly because he played the Nadir build and just did not have the room in the extra deck. Which is another funny card that we had decided Super Poly was still very, very strong. And that was another card that I think people had kind of been like, oh, Super Poly's effectiveness is kind of like not that strong. But we all settled on Droll and Super Poly, at various points throughout our testing. And so I think Corey's list, honestly, his main deck is probably a little bit better than mine because I played 41 with 2 talents. I think mostly that decision came down to my comfort level with talents because I wanted another going second card and another card to combat hand traps, but talents wound up not meshing super strong with the deck because I think it's just so mid-range and solid that the things that talents does in combo decks is like it's a force multiplier. Mm-hmm. In this deck, it's like drawing 2s, maybe not that crazy. Looking at the hand was always pretty much the better option, but even then, it's like it wasn't that great. And going second, it just did not have the impact I wanted it to have. So I think I probably would have just gone to 40 and played a third pot. So for example, I think Talents was way better in the build that Austin was playing because Austin was playing the Deer Servant. So like if they ever sent anything that triggered something, Talents got to go off. And so he also was playing Winda. So like if you go Talents, let me see that hand. Oh, that's an imperm. Put it back, right? And well, now they can't ever out your window. But
No, I get it.
but now in my deck, I don't really have those like auto win cons or guaranteed triggers, and so Talents was kind of it's just a really meh card all day.
Even knowing what to negate with the Novox wasn't helpful.
Well, I mean, obviously it is, but obviously it is. But you know, it's funny because I think Imperm was such a big card, and people were still on Nib. And this deck oftentimes just does not give your opponent an opportunity to ever Nib or Imperm at a good time. And so sometimes those cards are just stuck in your opponent's hand, or Valor sometimes. Like, people I think were pretty like not ready to Valor me very often because of the way just the deck works. And they're tossing -1s at you, so a lot of times, like, I remember one time I got hand trapped 3 times and set up the exact same board, and I was like, even if I had Talents here, it would not matter. He just -3'd himself, you know, like. So I don't know, man. It just didn't seem. It's just very meh. I won't say it's bad, but it was just very meh all day.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Now I might as well just run through things real quick. Everyone can frickin' see it on the screen, but I'll say them out loud just so everyone can hear me say them. You got triple of our level 1 low lady. You got, or is it a dude? Is the level 1 a dude?
It's a girl. It's a girl.
All right. Our lovely level 1 lady. We got triple Saphira. One of the
old man.
Yeah, old man, who's actually kind of wild. That card's crazy. It puts up interruption at points where you wouldn't expect it. Triple Diviner, the OG normal summon. Trias Hierarchica, because you got to send her. I'm going to pause right here. Did you ever resolve its effect for tributing more than one or no?
All the time, actually. I did it at least 3 times at the tournament because I think another thing that a lot of voiceless players do unnecessarily is use Trias. So a lot of times I would, especially if my hand is really good, I would just leave Diviner and low up on the board, and then on my opponent's turn use her as an interrupt. And so
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we've got 2 of Skull Guardian, Novax, whatever you want to call them, 2 of Mr. Pitch Yourself to negate or Solemn, warding on legs, Saravis, triple Ash, triple Droll, triple Nib, double Pot, double Talents. We spent any time talking about that. Pre-preparation of Rites, the must Ash Blossom inherent +1 card, 2 of the Ritual Spell, 3 of the Continuous Spell, 3 of your Super Poly, 1 Call By, and 1 Trap card. Now, I think that you've got very clean ratios here. If you had to say what your 41st card was, what would it be?
My 41st card was definitely the second Talents.
The second Talents?
Yeah, because for a long time I had it at 40 with the just 1 Talents, but I decided a long time ago that I actually like this deck at 41 because you don't want to draw the trap and you don't want to draw the old man. And so I kind of like this deck at 41, just for the slightly higher chance to hide those 2 bricks in the deck.
Understandable. Now, the hand trap lineup. I think that this is my slightly ignorant perspective, but I'm relatively tuned in right now. This seems like the perfect ratio of what you were trying to play to counter things. Now, Droll is a point of contention. People saying it ain't doing enough right now because pure Snake Eyes don't give a crap. What do you say to those people?
Okay, so I understand the argument, but the thing about Droll and pure Snake Eyes is if they ever start Bonfire, Droll is actually putting in a lot of work. And I found out that pure Snake Eyes in our testing had to start Bonfire to do something way more often than Fire King Snake Eye did. And also, the underrated part about Droll in that matchup, which I don't understand why people, why they would disagree with me, is the pure Snake Eye deck will draw 1 off the OSS, as all the Fire King Snake Eyes do, but they also draw 1 off Formula Synchron. And they're a heavy hand trap deck as well, as I mean pretty much every deck is this format. So a lot of times the viability of Droll in that matchup came down to cutting them off the draw 2 that they get off the OSS and the Formula Synchron, because I do not want to play against hand traps as well as Baron and Savage on my turn. And so, like, if I can cut them off from drawing an Ash off Formula or drawing a Valor off of OSS, Droll is doing a lot of work. And like I said, too, if they ever open Bonfire, you're actually cutting them off from quite a lot of their plays. And so I understand that this card may not do, in certain scenarios, everything that you would want Droll to do, just to totally shut down a turn, but that's not exactly what I'm using it for. This is a very mid-range deck, and early on in this deck's life cycle for our testing group, I had been trying to play it a lot more aggressively and combo-oriented, which was just totally incorrect, and I realized it's just a bottleneck deck. If I can limit your resources to where my Omni Negate has a lot of value, and my Super Poly can equalize the board state, or I get to drop a nib, and you've got as many or one less card than me, then my deck is free to start winning me the game. So Droll accomplishes that pretty much against both variants for me, and so that's the way I see the card. Like, I want to bottleneck my opponent. I want to put them into very few plays. Whereas if I give them a draw 2 off OSS and Formula, I'm opening up the world again to them. And so I just don't want to do that.
Understandable. Now, with how your deck is built right now, and the knowledge you have of going through the tournament and performing as well as you did, do you think there's anything you would change in the main deck going forward?
Well, like I said, I think I would cut the talents and just play 41 with a third pot, and I would have to consider what I want that last card to be.
So the 41 matters to you that much that you have the pathway to 40 right now, but you would intentionally go back to 41.
I would. I really like that number in this deck. So
Fair enough.
I don't know what I want that 41st card to be. I'd have to think about it, but yeah.
Very well, very well. But let's take a look at the extra real quick. I mean, this is obvious stuff here. The Entis, the Mud Dragon, Garura, Mr. Earth Golem, Adagnister. Is that Panzer Dragon I'm looking at here?
That is a Panther Dragon.
What the heck? How do you make this guy again?
You tell your Snake Eye opponent to put their Formula Synchron and their Warlord Savage into the graveyard.
Okay, all right. Respect. I like that. That's smart thinking.
At the tournament, the pure Snake Eye guy I played against, he had Savage and Formula, and he goes, Formula effect, and I go, okay, cool, change Super Poly, and he was like, this is a light and a dark, and I said, yeah, I know, put him in the graveyard. He didn't know I was gonna make Panzer. So.
That's crazy, dude. Did its other effect? Isn't it like when it's sent to grave or something, you pop another card? Too?
It's like when it gets destroyed, you get to pop a card, but that never came up. So.
I got you. I think it's crazy enough that you get to summon it to begin with. Everyone, look for your copies, all right? Check through that bulk.
Yeah, it's a funny card.
Yeah, definitely. You got the big Drago guy and your Predaplant. No surprises there. Arclight to go with Diviner. Chaos, because you can make it with relative ease in this deck. You got your Anima, your Link Karibo, double SP, double Dynamondo. That's one thing I love about the Link lineup for this deck. It's so simple. You don't got to spice it up too much. I see no objections here. I think this is relatively outside of the Panzer Dragon standard for somebody who's playing Super Poly. From what I've anecdotally heard, the extra deck isn't massively important in this deck. But are there any changes you would foresee yourself making in the future, or anything you see wrong with what I just said?
No, honestly, if you're playing Super Poly, I think you just smack your extra deck with as many targets as possible, just so that you get full value off of it. You could definitely do less and throw in a little like Selene access code package, but that was another thing that we kind of learned through our testing, that you really don't have to put in any kill packages. I never missed like lethal like very often at all, and in a situation where you're going for lethal or you would like to go to lethal but couldn't get it, you're in such an advantageous game state usually that it does not matter. So. Yeah,
and call me crazy. Doesn't the old man help you kill people? Like, that guy just gets slapped onto the board. Yeah.
Well, the trap is awesome for that. But yeah, so.
So, okay, fair enough. It's looking strong enough there. Side deck's got some spice. I want to take my time here because Phantasme is a fair choice for this format. How was it treating you?
I loved Phantasme. So, in my top 16 match, it was... Phantasme won me the game by doing something weird, because I used Phantasme on my opponent's turn and it got Ash Blossom. And my teammates were looking at me like, oh, well, that sucks. And I went, no way, dude, that's broken. My hand loses to Ash. and so he ate an Ash Blossom on my opponent's turn, and then I got to try and play on mine, you know? And so also the fact that Phantasme can stop Promethean Princess and lets me dig for my Cosmics, lets me dig for my Soul Release, lets me dig for my Nib. That happened once at the tournament where I Phantasmade, drew Nib, put something back, Nib my opponent. I mean, that was really crazy. So I really, really, really like Phantasme. And even though this deck tends to not care about Valor and Imperm, there are like certain situations where you really got to get Diviner off, or you really got to get low off, and if you stuck Phantasme, you can just protect them. So
right, he's your built-in insurance policy. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I really, really like Phantasme.
Now, I'm going to double back on something here. We know Cerevis has got that sneaky hand effect. How often were you catching people off guard with a Cerevis in hand that you're using to protect something like a lower Diviner? Or were you not using it for that case much?
No, that card is awesome. Like, that's another reason why we found out this deck actually has a better time against fire than a lot of other decks, is because you have a searchable card that lets you play around Promethean Princess, and getting Promethean at the wrong time is devastating. Like, it can be just utterly devastating. But this deck has Cerevis, and Cerevis is just awesome for doing that. That's also one of the reasons we still like Super Poly, because I guess the argument against Super Poly was always like, oh, well, if you're playing against somebody who puts up a board that's not super polyable, well, then it really sucks. And that's true, but in our testing too, they let themselves get super polyed at some point during your turn. At some point. Super Poly will have a window to Super Poly, and so we can put Mud Dragon, and that's why Mud Dragon was so valuable, because you can turn off Imperms, Failures, and Promethean Princess.
Facts.
And so we really liked Cerevis. I really liked Phantasme. I really liked Super Poly and Mud Dragon for that reason.
Now, to transition briefly to another card that's a little bit of a point of contention across voiceless players and ritual players in general, we've got that Odd Eyes Ritual Monster right here, the half Pendulum, half Ritual Monster. Now, I know he's got a pretty wild effect, but part of it, he's got like a Masquerade type effect, right? Where it costs life points to do something?
Yeah, he's got a little burn effect on if you summon extra deck monsters. It never came up during the tournament, but technically this was a card for time. And I also wanted it because when I go first, I'm just bringing in anti-spells and summon limits. And my theory there is like, well, I can stick the Omni and a Spell Negate so that I can stick those floodgates on the field and keep them up. So that was the idea with him. He wasn't terrible, but I honestly only summoned him like one time, and so his overall impact throughout the course of the tournament was pretty mediocre. I might just straight up cut him for a third anti-spell. That card is broken. Like, oh my lord.
Yeah, I was about to say, anti-spell and summon limit were running rampant across the board in this tournament, generally speaking. We saw many players bringing in those hard-going first trap cards when they knew they were going first. It's so intriguing to see how the ebbs and flows of the formats go on, and we always see this shift back to people bringing in that powerful 3-of trap card. Like, back in the day, it was a Point of the Red Lotus. I say back in the day, it was only like in 2020. It wasn't that long ago. Triple Point of the Red Lotus, coming in when you're going first every single time. Before that, Triple Kali's a Solemn Judgment coming in every time you're going first, without a doubt. I even saw some people at this event who were citing in Triple Copies of Solemn Strike for the same purpose. Yep. Now here, you've jacked it up even harder. You're going 5 deep. You just said it yourself, you would go 6 deep into the going first package. What makes you think that you're able to commit so many side deck slots to going first, and what makes these cards the choice? Anti-spell and summon limit.
So this would not be a choice that I would make if this deck was not so well-rounded. Because this deck is very well-rounded, I think that you can devote your side deck to a lot more going first cards than I typically would. Also, another thing to point out about this particular side decking strategy with all the going first cards is that we knew what we were going to play against. You know what I mean? So it was like, True. I don't have to prep. In my opinion, I don't have to prep that hard for Labyrinth. My main deck has Ash and Super Poly. Both of those cards cook Lab. And so I also have Cosmic, which is really good against Lab, which is not... But I also knew you were an insane person if you brought Lab to this tournament, because Lab just has a really hard matchup against Fire. And so I think my idea would be if like Corey or Austin had come to me and had been like last minute, like, hey, actually, Miles, I'm going to play Labyrinth, I would have been like, no, you're not.
Yeah, slap him right across the flipping face.
I would have said you are not playing Lab. And so because of that, I pretty much had figured out that there's only one deck I need to prep for. Really. Snake Eye, well, I guess 2. Pure Snake Eye and Snake Eye Fire King, which to me, like, all the cards hit the same, hit them the same. So that's why Soul Release, Cosmic, and my main deck were built to beat those decks, and it totally panned out because that's all we played against. I played against 2 non-Snake Eye decks the whole tournament.
Which were?
Labyrinth and and Flu. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I want to take a step back for a moment. Let's talk about the tournament real quick. Your personal matchups, you just said them for us. What was your personal record for the tournament?
In the 10 rounds of Swiss, I went 8-2.
Strong.
And then I won in top 16, so that was 9-2. And then unfortunately, I actually drew pretty much the worst hands that the deck could possibly produce in the top 8 match. And so I did lose my top 8 match, which felt really bad. But so I guess my overall record was 9-3.
Can I take a rough guesstimate as to what your hand was?
Yeah,
I'm thinking like double ritual either, or we got the trap card being chilling in there, big old man, and I'm gonna say a talents that wasn't doing jack.
It was let me think. It was okay. So it technically was playable. I will admit that. So I opened I opened a diviner, a ritual spell, a droll, a super poly, and I opened up a Cerberus, I think. But if you see that hand, the only thing it can do is pray that diviner goes off.
Resolve. Yeah.
And
let me guess. It didn't.
It did not. It did not. So I wound up losing that really bad. And then game 2, I also drew another Pearly unplayable hand, which is really sucky because all day this deck was giving me like playable games the whole day, which is another reason I really like this deck. Is like, I feel like if you're a halfway decent player and you just get to play Yu-Gi-Oh, like sometimes that's enough, you know.
It's so consistent, man. This is like, listen. Okay, any of my people who are Drytron fans right here, don't get triggered when I say this. This very well might be the evolution of the ritual strategy right now. We're looking at it right now. And
man,
the reason, listen, and Miles, I know that you're like me on this one. I've dubbed you a Drykage before. We're cut from the same cloth in this sense, but you have to recognize with me here. 2-card combo deck versus 1-card combo deck. Sometimes it comes down to being that simple. The room you get, the just sheer amount of space you get to pack your deck with those flex spots, like you've done right now, it gives you a chance, not only a chance, but it gives you a chance to kick the crap out of the Snake Eyes and the Fire Kings. And I can only imagine that this deck would be on a warpath if those decks weren't in the meta. So, what are your thoughts, generally speaking, on Ritual in general and how a deck like this compares to something like Drytron?
Oh yeah, that's a great freaking topic. Great topic. I mean, I love ritual strategies in general because, well, first of all, I do have a, maybe I don't sound like it, but I do have underneath the surface a pretty big ego.
It's okay, me too, don't worry. I'll say it straight up.
And so ritual strategies is almost like playing with a little bit of a handicap because you have a mechanic that is literally like 30 years old, you know, that requires you do a lot of weird things to kind of work, and you've got built-in bricks in your ritual spells. Now, I think the way that Konami is paving the way forward for ritual decks, and I think you saw this experiment starting with Necroz, is by making the ritual spells themselves very strong.
Right.
And Voiceless has a really good ritual spell, and its effect came up a lot. And the fact that it has synergy with the trap card too is really nice. So like, your ritual spells now just aren't purely garbage dead cards, you know?
And they're not just your ritual spells, because this archetype has a monster that's double dutying as well, no?
Correct, and Saphira is nuts. And so I think they're trying to make rituals a little bit more of a cohesive strategy. Now, I do think Konami realized they did mess up with Drytron, because
it's a little too strong.
That deck is just, you know, it's ritual dragon rulers. And so I think though this deck kind of paves a new way forward for ritual to not just be ignorant combo, which is really cool because it's a mid-range control strategy, and all the cards do pretty cool stuff. And I really like the direction that Konami's taking ritual with these cards. I actually think the deck is 10 times cooler with their new spell and the new Saphira coming out too. So I'm really excited for that. I really want to see how the deck plays with those cards.
And that's the perfect transition to one of my closing out questions here, Miles, and that's going to be, where do you see this deck's placement in the meta in a world without Fire King? Is it on the top? Is it fighting alongside some other contender that might creep out of the woodworks? I mean, I'm looking at the deck right now, and the fortunate thing about it, unlike Drytron, is it doesn't get completely obliterated by Bestials, but they can hurt at certain points. You know, you hit your low out of the grave when you're trying to bring it back off a Dynamondo play, or not even hit the low, hit the frickin' cards you're trying to summon back. If the meta were to shift, and Fire wasn't the dominant strategy, and people started to become more prepared for Voiceless, how scared would you be? Or do you think that, no, this deck stands the test of time, even though it's not the primary deck in the limelight right now? It's more than powerful enough to deal with the tools at hand.
I think this is a really good deck to pick up. You know, it's funny because I think as Yu-Gi-Oh players, you kind of become like a little bit, the good Yu-Gi-Oh players become like little mini psychologists. You kind of figure out how people work. And the thing about this deck is, I think for people who pick it up and play it, or who are like you know, ritual fanatics, they'll pick it up and love it. But this deck is not a deck that people are going to pick up and just be like, oh my god, I love this deck, I love this deck, I love this deck. Because what it does is really simple. And what it does is not glamorous, you know? It's not like a 50-stat combo, which I love those decks. I love playing those decks. But I don't think this is going to be a deck that the overall community gravitates towards. And because of that, I think it's such a safe pickup to learn and master. So I would say, if you're looking for a deck that you can play for a long time and that has adaptability format to format, this deck seems like such a strong choice. Like an incredible choice. It's got great synergy with Floodgates, got great synergy with every hand trap, has a bunch of space to toy around with and play, and I think, yeah, like I said, I just think it's a really good pickup. It's a really good pickup.
Final question, anything see yourself changing about it right now, or are you happy with how it is?
Well, like I said, I'm excited for the new cards, and I definitely go down to 41 without the talents, probably. But, so, before we close though, Logan, can I say a couple things?
Please, always.
Yeah. So we didn't get to see it. We didn't look at my friends' lists, but if you have an opportunity, we have a lot of deck profiles out on YouTube. Go and check out those profiles to see Corey's list and to see Austin's list. They're both really interesting, both excellent players from the Houston area, and this was their first top cut. And so I just want to say, like, my testing group is awesome, and I would not be able to do it without, first of all, those two guys. And then second of all, I wanted to give a huge, massive shout out to Bryce and Colby, who are also teammates of mine. Especially, and this is no shade to Colby, because Colby is awesome and he was super helpful. But big shout out to Bryce, because with me personally, anytime I would call Bryce or text him and be like, hey, can we head up to the game store and can we please test? He was there. And so, like, Bryce helped me develop a lot of our strategy and the team strategy heading into the 3v3, and he spent a lot of time kicking my butt and my teammates' butts with fire before we learned how to master those matchups. And so Bryce was so insanely valuable to our success. And then also I wanted to say that the 3v3, even though I know it was kind of an event marred with a lot of controversy, this was, like I said, I thought nothing would top Hartford, because I took the deck I loved, like, and I do love Drytron. Like, it's probably still my favorite deck ever. And I was able to take that really far and play against a lot of pros and beat a lot of pro players at that event. So, like, I never thought something would top it. But this event was the hardest tournament I've ever played in. We played against so many good teams, and I wanted to give them all a shout out. We played against Dominic Couch's team. Him and Mike Albanese were playing on a team, and I can't remember their third member, but those guys are awesome players. I wanted to give a shout out to Cotton's team. Cotton, Isala, and Furman. We played against them, and they were really gracious, great opponents.
Did you cook them?
We did. We beat them.
Yeah.
We'll be humble this time, but no.
No, stroke that ego, baby. You cooked his ass. No, I'm kidding.
But they were awesome. Isala and Jesse and Furman, and we played against Chancey's team in top 16. And I can't remember his other two teammates' name, but Chancey's team was really awesome, gracious, a bunch of great guys. We played against so many pros and broken teams at this event, and so, like, every round we were winning was like, oh my gosh, like, it was so incredible. And so, like I said, hardest tournament I've ever competed in, and to take it to a top 8 was really awesome. And once again, just shout out to my teammates, Corey and Austin and Bryce and Colby. Love those guys. Love my local game stores, Scrub Tier Gaming and Game Guys, and all the people in Houston who made it possible. Like I said, everyone knows I actually do have a pretty big ego, but at the same time, I want to humble myself and just say thank you to everyone who made it possible. And also, you know what, big shout out to Logan for keeping me on the channel and a semi-consistent face, because Logan, you've done a lot for the Drytron boys, and you're invaluable to this community too. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, Miles, look at this. He's being so humble. It's a little scary, man. Let's stroke that ego again real quick and say, like, I thought it was very endearing how you praise your boys for getting their first top. Hey, they were training with a master in yourself who has been around the block a few times. Okay, brother? Okay.
One second, Logan. But I know we got hyped up to close, but you said that you wanted the secret.
I do want the secret.
And I'm going to give you the secret. So, at YCS Indianapolis, and once again, one more shout out. At YCS Indianapolis, I got cooked. I took Drytron, and it was just the wrong call. And even though I love the deck and I can't be mad I took it, it was the wrong call for that event. And I wound up floundering out and failing, even though I thought I could have done it. And so I saw Jeff Jones there, and Jeff Jones is my Yu-Gi-Oh! Go. I know that a lot of people won't agree with that, because there are players who I think are technically more credentialed, but for me, Jeff is my go. And so I saw Jeff, and I went up to him and talked to him, and never talked to him before. And he was such a sweet guy, really nice. And I asked Jeff, like, you know, what were you doing back in the day to top as much as you did? And he just told me, like, dude, I played so much Yu-Gi-Oh! And I worked my butt off. And so I told the guys, I was like, look, we're going to have to put in, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8-hour testing sessions if we want to be successful. And so
those reps in, you got to get those reps in.
And so exactly. And my boys responded, and we put in the reps, we put in the hours, we put in the time, and we printed out proxies like 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. And we were playing with proxies with fully built out fire decks, fully built out voiceless decks months ago. So I think if you want to be successful, you got to have a good support system, and you also you have to put the work in. You got to be willing to sacrifice, you know, some sleep. You got to be willing to sacrifice, you know, your other hobbies, and you got to play Yu-Gi-Oh! You just got to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! So
if it's that important to you and you want to get results like our boy Jeff Jones, if you want to get results like Patrick Hoban, like any of the other greats out there, Jesse Cotton, what's the flipping guy's name? Josh Schmidt. You know, if you want to get results like these guys, I think that's one thing they will agree on. Pack, they'll all agree on it across the board. You got to get your reps in. You got to fucking practice like you love this game. Even when you hate this game, you got to get in there and you got to practice, man. This is one thing that I think was true. When I was at the top of my game, it was when I was playing so often, like every single night. I think you're right. I think that is the secret. And then when I stopped playing frequently, then I'm reading cards and wondering what they do. And then before I know it, I've been 2-0'd and I'm fucking sitting at the side event table.
Exactly.
So it's all about that consistency, my man.
You gotta make those sacrifices, and so yeah.
That's the key, everyone. Make sure you have enough time for this. Time and money. Time and money. These cards ain't cheap either. All right, Miles, listen, my man. It is always a pleasure to have you on this channel, and you know that you are always welcome on here. Think about this as a second home, my friend. Our platform is yours. And if anybody has questions for Miles, leave them down in the comments down below. But any final thoughts, man?
No final thoughts. Put your comments down below. Sub to Logan JYA, and I'll probably be lurking in the comments to answer any questions.
All right, my friends. You've heard it here first. Logan JYA signing off. Have a great day, and I'll see you beautiful people later. Peace.